Welcome back to the program. You're watching Asean Talks on Asean TV, and still with us, Ms. Shoko Ishikawa, the Acting Regional Director for UN Women East and Southeast Asia. And we were talking about help with the exercise, the right of the woman for the general election that coming up in Timor-Leste. How about Myanmar? There were just conference in Myanmar recently, and you were also participated.
Yes. I think developments in Myanmar are very exciting. I think the transition process is beyond a lot of people's expectations in a sense.
That sounds good.
Yes.
Right.
And the conference that I was at, it was talking about development options for Myanmar. And part of the discussion was devoted on how Myanmar could develop from the huge disparities that they have right now into a more inclusive development of the various communities and the population that they have. And the message there was that Myanmar's a latecomer in the game, and so there's a lot of lessons to learn from the mistakes that some of the countries have made around the world.
Okay.
Yes. And but something that I did miss was actually the discussion around the participation of women in the process. And even though the term inclusive growth was being used, inclusion of women, which make up 50% of the population, was not quite discussed in a more thorough manner. And so in that sense, I feel that there is a responsibility of the UN to bring up these issues, to be engaging with the big development partners that are coming in or are thinking about coming into Myanmar to provide support. And I think there's some good civil society that is growing.
A lot of people talking about Myanmar lately. How about other countries in ASEAN region? Which one you think we should worry the most, or the women rights issues should have been more aware?
I don't want to say worry too much.
Okay.
They're all different. I think it's a very diverse region with different political systems, economic systems, different cultures and religions. There are different areas that are of concern. The trends, for example, in decentralization of governance in places like Indonesia, in Cambodia, it's welcome because it creates more opportunities for women at the community level to participate, but also it is creating challenges. In Indonesia, for example, local governments can create their own local regulations. And sometimes that is driven by conservative forces that would limit women's rights. And there is a need to carefully monitor the situation, also to help the government in terms of reaching down to the local governments and sort of creating at least a national framework of what is acceptable and not is what acceptable in terms of local level regulations to be passed. Of course, countries that have elections upcoming, we are trying to support more. Cambodia has elections coming up in the next few years, and we want to see more participation of women, just like in the case of Timor-Leste. We want to make sure that women are able to participate and run in the elections, as well as be the voters and showing really what they want to see in their leaders through the election process. I understand that Mongolia also has an election coming up, and Mongolia is a country that passed a quota law once in 2007, but then they retracted it. And they have recently enacted a gender equality law, which has put back a quota system into place. So it's a test in the sense there's an election this year, and to see whether women would be able to take advantage of this quota law.
Why do you think in some countries, these developing countries, it's matter to them whether women will be voting or not? I mean, is it because of religion, belief, culture, tradition, or they don't really think that women should have a voice
there is
in governance?
there is a stigma attached to participation in politics. I think in a lot of places you hear women say that, well, politics is actually considered dirty.
Oh.
And so they do not want to engage with it, or there's a lot of corruption, and so they do not want to engage with it. And there is also the patriarchal system and the gender stereotypes sort of saying that women should be in the house and not be in the politics. But what we have seen from other countries is that with the participation of women in politics, and CEDAW advocates for at least 30% of women in the elected positions. But it's when you get that critical mass of women in politics, then you start seeing the change in the kind of policies in the countries that are more sensitive to women, more responsive to gender equality needs. And so it is very important to sensitize and make women aware that it's actually their right to be in politics, because that even is not understood. In some countries, for example in Timor-Leste, women do not know that they actually have a right to participate in politics.
So would you say the differences between culture and religion and tradition actually play a big part in this, and also make it more complicated or difficult to reach out or to even make them aware?
It is challenging, but what we see is that there are women in each of the countries that would want to be part of decision making. And I think we have to support those women so that that voice is enhanced in a way. And culture and tradition is really not something that is very static. If you see centuries ago, there were no women in politics.
Right.
But you've seen a greater increase in women's participation. There are laws that promote women's participation in politics, and so globally, the current average is about 19% women in politics. That's still not at the level of 13%, but there is a change. And I think culture and tradition is what people make of it, and how women also participate to change that.
I was going to ask about how can we measure the changes, but I guess only time can tell us. It cannot happen overnight. It have to be 3, 4, 5 years, I guess. So what can we do as the ASEAN community? Let's say from government to government, or just for me being a citizen of ASEAN community itself. What can we do to help raise awareness of these issues or help make the difference?
I think it happens in multiple levels, from the highest level within the ASEAN in the decision-making bodies. And UN Women works closely with several ASEAN sectoral bodies, particularly the ASEAN Committee on Women, which are basically the gathering of the women's and gender equality ministries and departments of the different countries. And within that group, there is awareness that advancement of women's participation in politics has to be a priority for the ASEAN. But this group needs to be supported so that they could send this message to the other sectoral bodies within ASEAN, and we are helping ASEAN with that. Because ASEAN is currently, it's very much in the 3 different pillars. There's the social cultural pillar, there is the economic pillar, and there's the
security.
Exactly. And the economic and the security pillar is not really looking at gender equality issues and advancement of women, when they are actually maybe holding key to real progress for women. So at the highest level within ASEAN, I hope that we could see a little bit more inter-pillar collaboration in that sense. At the citizens level, at the ASEAN peoples level, I think we need to be really finding the champions in the communities and bringing the women that are in politics together so that they could have a voice of what difference they could make in politics. We need to build a strong alliance with the male advocates also.
Right.
And it's encouraging that, for example, in I think in the ASEAN Parliament, they have discussed, for example, the issues of violence against women. And it would be very helpful if we see the stronger voice of male policymakers, politicians, as well as an ordinary person on the street talking more about how to create a more gender equal society in ASEAN.
How to, what's it called, cross that line.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So how to not see the, what's it called, the differences that they expected from the different gender.
Right. Yes.
Okay, and that's we're talking about regional issues, but in Thailand, in March 8th itself at Chulalongkorn University, they will have the conference, interactive panel discussion, Youth Voice Unite to End Violence Against Women and Girls, which will be the theme for next year campaign for the UN Women. So if you have a chance, check it out on their website, or maybe you can join and see what you can do for the women's right in general. And that's all the time we have today. Thank you very much to join us and share with us the activities and the issues and the awareness of the women's rights. ขอบคุณมากค่ะ And that's all the time I have for you tonight. And until I see you next time, สวัสดีค่ะ